Imagine waking up tomorrow morning, and there is a locked briefcase, just sitting squarely on your kitchen table.
Okay, I'm listening.
So you open it up, and inside is exactly $1 million. Crisp, banded bills.
Not a bad way to start a Tuesday.
Right. But there's a catch. A very specific, very stressful catch. You have to use every single penny of that money to buy an existing business by the end of the week, or the money just vanishes. Poof.
Oh, wow. Okay, the pressure's on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, as you sit there staring at that cash, what is the very first metric like, the absolute first number you're going to look for when you start evaluating potential companies to buy?
I mean, I know what most people would say.
Right. I am willing to bet that for almost everyone listening to this right now, the immediate instinct is revenue.
Oh, 100%.
You want to see the top line sales, right? You want to see just this massive amount of cash flowing through the registers.
It's the most natural instinct in the world, honestly. I mean, we are entirely conditioned by our culture to equate the sheer size of the revenue with the, fundamental success of the enterprise.
Right. You see the big numbers and you just assume it's a winner.
Exactly. We read these headlines about companies doing 10 million, 50 million, 100 million in sales, and our brains just immediately short circuit to a single conclusion.
That's a gold mine.
Right.
Yeah.
That company must be a highly valuable, highly desirable asset. We kind of conflate activity with value.
It feels like the ultimate undeniable scorecard. Big revenue equals a good business.
Yeah.
And small revenue equals a bad business. So if a business is pulling in $5 million a year, it must be, 10 times better than the one pulling in 500,000.
But if you actually followed that instinct with your $1 million briefcase, you might be walking straight into a financial slaughterhouse.
The slaughterhouse, wow.
I mean it. Because that laser focus on top-line revenue, that shiny, impressive number at the very top of the spreadsheet, it's actually setting you up for a devastating mistake.
So if you guessed revenue, you aren't alone. But today we are doing a deep dive into a framework from Australia Business Broker that proves exactly why revenue is a trap.
It is absolutely a trap, and it's a trap that catches everyone.
Really? Even experienced people?
Oh, yeah. Not just first-time buyers who are fresh to the market. I'm talking about seasoned veteran business owners who have spent 30 years building a company and are finally looking to sell.
Wow. So what's the mission for today's deep dive?
Well, we're going to decode the hidden metrics of business valuation. We want to understand the mechanics behind this truly fascinating, almost paradoxical phenomenon in the business world.
The idea that smaller is sometimes better.
Exactly. Why a smaller, quieter, seemingly a boring business will routinely sell for twice as much and attract 10 times as many aggressive buyers as a flashy, high-revenue competitor.
Right, the ones that dominate the industry headlines.
Yeah, it requires a total paradigm shift. Experienced, sophisticated buyers like private equity firms, strategic acquirers, they view a business through a completely different, highly skeptical lens.
So they're just blind to the flashy sales numbers.
Completely blind. What they are actually doing is looking past the revenue to examine the underlying architectural integrity of the business.
Meaning what, exactly?
Meaning they are hunting for risk, they are evaluating operational maturity, they are ruthlessly calculating how independent the business is from the person currently running it.
Wait, so let's pull back the curtain on how a buyer actually investigates a business. Let's put on the shoes of a ruthless acquirer, right?
Let's do it.
We're going to walk through the exact due diligence mechanisms they use to just tear a company apart before they write a check. And we have to start where every serious transaction starts.
The money.
The money. But we have to immediately draw a hard, unforgiving line in the sand between past revenue and future predictability.
That distinction is the bedrock of any acquisition. Buyers are entirely obsessed with consistent financial performance.
Consistent being the key word there.
Absolutely. They demand ironclad confidence that the business generates reliable profits and sustainable cash flow. And they absolutely will not take the seller's word for it.
Right. No handshakes and promises.
No. Trust me, bro, it does not work in M&A. They are going to demand a forensic historical record. The absolute floor for any serious buyer is a rigorous audit of at least 3 full years of financial statements.
Okay, let's dig into that 3-year requirement. because 3 entire years is a massive look-back period in the life cycle of a business.
It really is.
I mean, a lot can happen in 36 months.
Yeah.
They want to see consistent revenue growth, stable profit margins, positive cash flow.
Perfectly accurate bookkeeping, tax compliance.
Right. And crucially, they want to see that these statements were prepared by legitimate professionals, not just a founder messing around in QuickBooks on a Sunday night while watching Netflix.
Exactly. A shoebox full of receipts and a color-coded Excel spreadsheet you made yourself. That is going to get you laughed out of the boardroom.
So why 3 years, specifically?
Well, let's look at the underlying mechanics. A single year of incredible financial performance is mathematically meaningless to a buyer.
What, really? Meaningless?
Pretty much. It could be a complete anomaly. It might be the result of a macroeconomic fluke, a one-time government stimulus.
Oh, like PPP loans during COVID?
Exactly. Or maybe just a lucky break, or a single massive contract that the seller knows will never be repeated.
Ah, okay.
3 years of data establishes a trend line. It proves that the underlying business model is fundamentally sound. It proves the company can survive different seasons, changes in the market cycle, and, shifting consumer trends.
Okay, here's how I picture this. Tell me if this works. Let's say I'm standing on a used car lot.
Okay.
I'm looking at this absolute monster of a sports car. The paint is flawless. The engine sounds incredible. That is the top-line revenue, right? It looks amazing on the surface.
I like where this is going.
But before I hand over my life savings, I ask the dealer for the service logbook. I want to see the maintenance history.
Naturally.
And if the dealer suddenly gets defensive, kind of shuffles his feet and tells me, well, we lost the official logbook, but trust me, I've been doing the oil changes myself in my driveway. I wrote the dates on some sticky notes in the glove box.
Yeah, that's a huge red flag.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't care how fast that car can go. I'm walking away immediately because the risk of the engine exploding halfway down the highway is just simply too high.
That translates perfectly into the psychology of M&A. Clean financial records actually increase buyer confidence far more than slightly higher profit margins.
That's fascinating.
Think about the profound implications of how a buyer weighs risk. An acquirer would eagerly purchase a business making, say, $800,000 a year in profit, provided the documentation is immaculate, audited, and transparent.
Rather than a business making more.
Yes, rather than a business claiming $1.2 million in profit, but with messy, disorganized, contradictory records.
Because the $800,000 is real.
Exactly. The $800,000 is real, and the $1.2 million is a gamble. And sophisticated buyers do not gamble.
Wait, hold on. Let's say I am the seller, right?
Okay.
I'm the founder of a tech services company, and over the last 12 months, I have just crushed it.
Okay, good for you.
We landed a few huge accounts, the team worked nights and weekends, and we literally doubled our revenue in a single year. It's a massive record-breaking spike.
Okay.
My revenue chart looks like a rocket ship taking off. Are you telling me a buyer looks at my incredible hustle, my rocket ship, and gets nervous? Shouldn't I be demanding a massive premium for that growth?
You would think so, right? But in the context of due diligence, a sudden, massive, unexplained spike in revenue is actually a glaring red flag.
Are you serious? It terrifies them.
It absolutely terrifies buyers. You have to remember the fundamental law of business valuation. Smart buyers are purchasing future income, not past achievements.
Okay, that makes sense. They want to know what they're going to get.
Right. They don't care how much money you made last year. They only care how much money they're going to make next year.
So if it's too volatile?
If your revenue is highly volatile, spiking wildly to the moon one year and plummeting the next, it becomes mathematically impossible for a buyer to build a reliable forecast.
How do they calculate their return on investment if they have no idea what the next quarter looks like?
Exactly. So volatility is the enemy of valuation, even if the volatility is pointing upward.
Wow. So buyers literally price risk into the multiple they use to value the company.
Precisely. Let's break down how this works mechanically. If a business generates highly predictable, boring, flatline profits year over year, the buyer perceives very low risk.
So they pay more for it.
Right. Because the risk is low, they are willing to pay a much higher multiple, say 5 or 6 times the annual earnings, to acquire it.
But if it's spiky?
If the business is erratic and spiky, the risk profile skyrockets. The buyer has to assume a worst-case scenario to protect their downside, so they might only offer 2 times earnings, assuming they make an offer at all.
Which is exactly why the absolute holy grail of business valuation is recurring revenue.
Yes. Oh, this is the golden ticket.
We see this everywhere now, right? Service agreements, maintenance contracts, subscription models. everything is turning into a subscription.
Because it works.
Let's make this incredibly tangible for everyone listening. Let's put two hypothetical landscaping businesses side by side.
Okay, I love a good hypothetical.
Business A is an aggressive, high-end commercial landscaping firm. They hunt big game. They might land a massive multi-million-dollar contract to design and install the landscaping for a brand new shopping mall.
Very lucrative.
Right. They make an absolute fortune for 6 months. The revenue is astronomical. But the second the trees are planted, they're back to zero. They have to hustle and pray they find another shopping mall being built.
So their revenue chart is a terrifying roller coaster.
Exactly. And then you have Business B. Business B doesn't do any installations. They focus exclusively on boring, ongoing maintenance contracts for existing corporate office parks.
The boring stuff.
Yeah. They go to the property managers and say, pay us a flat fee of $5,000 every single month, and we will keep the grass cut and the hedges trimmed year-round.
Nice and steady.
Their monthly revenue doesn't spike. It is incredibly flat, maybe just inching upward slightly each quarter as they add 1 or 2 new corporate parks to their route. Their chart is a gentle, utterly predictable, boring slope.
So if I am the buyer holding that $1 million briefcase and I look at Business A, the roller coaster, my stomach is in knots.
Yeah, what if interest rates go up and commercial real estate development stops?
Exactly. Nobody is building malls next year. My revenue goes to literally zero.
But Business B?
Business B, I can pull up their contracts, look at their books, and know with near absolute certainty exactly how much cash is going to hit the operating account on the 1st of next month.
Regardless of what the broader economy is doing.
Which is exactly why Business B will sell for a massive premium over Business A, even if Business A occasionally hits higher peaks of revenue.
Because they aren't starting from zero on day one.
Right. They are inheriting a contracted, guaranteed revenue stream. It lowers their discount rate.
Huh.
But there's another financial trap we have to talk about here.
Oh, what's that?
The classic contradiction between the profit and loss statement and the tax returns. This happens constantly in the lower middle market.
The 2 sets of books problem. Let me guess. The owner wants to look poor to the IRS, but rich to the buyer.
Exactly. For a decade, the business owner has been aggressively writing off everything under the sun. Personal vehicles, dubious travel expenses, massive entertainment budgets.
Just trying to artificially suppress their net profit and minimize their tax burden.
Right. But suddenly, when it's time to sell the company, they want a valuation based on how profitable the business actually is.
Of course they do.
So they sit down with the buyer and say, well, the tax return says we only made $100,000, but if you look over here, I really made $400,000 because I ran all my personal expenses through the company.
And the buyer's lawyer just smiles and says, sorry, we are basing our valuation on the $100,000 you legally declared to the government.
They will tear that argument apart. Buyers and their forensic accountants will spot that contradiction instantly.
But wait, is there a legal way to handle that?
Yes, in professional M&A, there is a legitimate process for this called add-backs. You calculate the true EBITDA earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization by adding back legitimate, non-recurring, or purely personal expenses.
Give me an example of an add back.
Say the owner pays themselves a salary of $500,000 when the market rate to hire a CEO is only $150,000. The buyer will add back that $350,000 difference to the profit.
Okay, that makes sense.
But it has to be rigorously documented. If the numbers are just a messy web of tax evasion, the trust is instantly broken. Due diligence fails right there.
Because if you were lying to the IRS, you're probably lying to them.
Exactly. The buyer just walks away.
You cannot have it both ways. You can't run your business like a chaotic, undocumented tax shelter for 10 years and then wake up one morning and expect a private equity firm to treat it like a premium blue chip asset.
It just doesn't work like that. The money has to be clean, it has to be real, and it has to be predictable.
Okay, so let's say a business passes this first grueling test. The financials are immaculate. The recurring revenue is humming. The buyer is convinced the money is real.
Great. Milestone 1 achieved.
But their very next thought takes us into entirely new, highly psychological territory. They look at all this amazing cash flow and ask a terrifying question.
Will this money keep flowing once the current owner walks out the door?
Exactly. Welcome to what the M&A world affectionately refers to as the bus test.
The bus test. It is the ultimate measure of operational maturity.
Meaning, if the founder gets hit by a bus tomorrow,
Or, more optimistically, wins the lottery, and immediately moves to a private island with no cell service.
Right, let's go with the island. Does the business survive, or does it collapse into chaos within a week?
Owner dependency is arguably the single largest valuation killer in the marketplace, and buyers are going to interrogate this ruthlessly.
They want to know exactly who manages daily operations. They want to know if the key vendor relationships are tied to the company or just tied to the owner's personal charm.
Exactly.
But let me stop here, because this feels like it flies in the face of everything we were taught about entrepreneurship.
Thought so?
Let's say I am an absolute force of nature. I built my agency from the ground up. I hustle 80 hours a week. I personally pitch every major client, and they love me.
You're the rainmaker.
Right. I oversee the creative team. I negotiate the leases. I personally sign off on every marketing campaign, and my face is literally the logo of the brand. I am the magic ingredient.
Right.
Are you telling me that my personal excellence, my sheer force of will, makes my business fundamentally less valuable?
It is a profoundly bitter pill for visionary founders to swallow, but yes, absolutely.
Wow.
Your personal excellence, your 80-hour work week, your magic touch, if it is not systemized and delegated, it is a massive, glaring liability to an acquirer.
That is so counterintuitive.
You have to understand the fundamental philosophy of the buyer. Sophisticated buyers are not purchasing a job, they are purchasing an asset.
Purchasing an asset, not a job. That changes the entire lens of how you view a company.
It is the ultimate dividing line between being a highly paid, self-employed individual and being a true business owner.
So if the business absolutely requires your physical presence
and your unique charisma and your personal decision-making to function, then a buyer isn't acquiring a standalone machine. They are simply buying the incredibly expensive, highly stressful privilege of working 80 hours a week in your place.
And most serious investors have absolutely zero interest in doing that.
None. They want an asset that yields a financial return while they are asleep or while they are focused on acquiring 5 other companies to bolt onto it.
So how does this play out during due diligence? How does a buyer actually test if a business is a job or an asset? Let's go back to our hypothetical scenarios, because the exact mechanisms of this are fascinating.
Sure, we're talking about standard operating procedures, SOP, CRM systems, automated workflows.
Let's visualize the due diligence audit. Let's imagine a buyer walks into the headquarters of a classic founder-led business. We will call it Founder Co.
Okay, I can see it.
The buyer sits down across from the owner and asks a very basic operational question. How exactly do you handle a severe customer escalation?
And the founder probably leans back, smiles proudly, and says, "Oh, I have a magic touch with angry clients. My cell phone number is at the bottom of every invoice. They just call me directly. I take them out to lunch. I smooth things over. Nobody leaves unhappy."
Right, which sounds great to the founder. But then the buyer asks, okay, how do you track inventory?
And the founder taps his temple and says, "I've been staring at these warehouse shelves for 20 years. I just have a gut feeling when we are running low on a particular SKU, and I call my guy at the supplier to send a truck."
Okay, I am sweating just thinking about trying to acquire Founder Co.
Right.
As a buyer, I do not have the founder's magic touch. I don't want angry clients calling my personal cell phone during dinner.
Nobody wants that.
And I definitely don't have 20 years of inventory intuition biologically hardwired into my brain. If I write a check and buy Founder Co., the second the founder walks out the door, all of that institutional knowledge evaporates into thin air.
The actual value of the business drops to zero instantly. When critical operational systems exist only in the neurological pathways of the owner's brain, the buyer assumes extreme continuity risk.
Wow. Okay, now let's contrast this by walking across the street to a system-led business. We will call it System Co.
Let's do it.
The buyer walks into the boardroom and asks the exact same question. How do you handle a severe customer escalation?
But the founder of System Co. doesn't say a word. Instead, the operations manager opens a laptop and projects a digital workflow onto the screen.
And what do they say?
They say, when a complaint comes in, it is logged into our customer relationship management platform. If it contains certain keywords, the CRM automatically routes it to our specialized retention team.
Okay, so it's out of the founder's hands already.
Completely. The team follows this exact, documented 12-step script. If the issue isn't resolved in 2 hours, the software automatically triggers an escalation to the department head with a pre-approved list of financial concessions they are authorized to offer.
And the founder is literally just sitting there sipping coffee, completely unnecessary to the process.
Exactly. And when the buyer asks about inventory, the operations manager pulls up another dashboard. Our warehouse uses an automated inventory management system with barcode scanners. When the stock dips below the algorithmically determined threshold, the software automatically generates a purchase order and sends it directly to the supplier via API.
Meaning it requires zero human intervention.
None!
If I am the buyer, SystemCo is an absolute revelation. I don't need to be a charismatic genius. I don't need to know anything about the underlying product, frankly.
You just need to make sure the management team continues to follow the documented systems. Operational maturity is the ultimate value driver. FounderCo is a fragile dictatorship. SystemCo is a resilient, self-governing republic.
That is a great way to put it. And this transition doesn't happen by accident.
No, it takes massive effort. Reducing owner dependency requires ruthless delegation. It means developing a layer of capable management staff.
You actually have to spend months documenting tedious procedures.
Yeah, creating employee manuals, actively extracting your own operational genius and embedding it into software and training protocols so that literally any competent person off the street could step in and run the machine.
Okay, so let's say the seller has done the hard work. We have secured the financial foundation with pristine audits. We've removed the founder's ego from the equation. The business runs on automated systems.
The buyer is feeling great.
Right. The operations are mature. But as we peel back another layer of this framework, we discover a completely different vector of risk.
Oh, here we go.
Even if the owner can successfully step away, what happens if the entire ecosystem of the business is propped up by just one or two external load-bearing pillars?
Ah, yes. This brings us to the terrifying reality of concentration risk.
Right. This is where due diligence transitions from looking at the internal mechanics to examining the external relationships.
And the single most critical external relationship is the customer base. Customer concentration is a massive, often fatal risk factor during an acquisition.
Is there a specific rule of thumb they use for that?
Yeah, the golden rule in M&A, the mathematical benchmark that buyers look for, is that absolutely no single customer should represent more than 10 to 20% of your total top-line revenue.
I think the best way to visualize this is to imagine your business as a giant, complex game of Jenga.
Oh, I like that.
Every single client you have is a wooden block supporting the tower. If you have 200 clients and they each contribute 0.5% of your total revenue, you have an incredibly stable tower.
You can pull out 5, 10, even 15 blocks, lose a dozen clients in a bad month, and the tower barely even wobbles. It's rock solid.
Exactly. But what if your client roster is dangerously top-heavy? What if you have one massive giant block sitting right at the base of the tower that represents 35% of your total revenue?
If you pull that one block out, the entire structure violently collapses.
The Jenga analogy perfectly captures the structural fragility. If a single client accounts for 40% of your revenue, buyers look at your business and they don't see a successful company. They see a catastrophe waiting to happen.
The logic is entirely binary. Losing one single customer should never fundamentally threaten the solvency of the entire organization.
But I have to push back here again, because again, this feels entirely counterintuitive to how businesses actually grow in the real world.
Right, because landing big clients is usually cause for celebration.
Exactly. Let's say I am running a mid-sized logistics company, and after years of pitching, I finally land a massive multinational whale of a client. I sign a contract with Amazon or Walmart.
Huge win.
This single contract doubles my company's revenue overnight. It makes up 50% of my total income. I am popping champagne. I won the account. I crushed the competition. Why on earth would a buyer look at my incredible victory and penalize me for it by slashing my valuation?
Because the buyer is not celebrating your past victory. They are terrified of their future liability.
Wait, really? But it's Amazon.
It doesn't matter. When a business changes ownership, it creates a massive window of vulnerability. Competitors aggressively use the news of an acquisition to try and poach clients, whispering that the new owners won't deliver the same quality.
Oh, right. They smell blood in the water.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, put yourself in the buyer's shoes. You just paid millions of dollars for this logistics company. The day after the sale closes, that 50% whale of a client decides they don't really like the new management team.
Or maybe their internal procurement office just decides to put the contract out for a competitive bid.
Yep. If that one client leaves, the new owner is instantly facing financial ruin. They can't cover payroll. They can't service the debt they took on to buy the company.
Wow. So the buyer is essentially inheriting a hostage situation. That one massive client holds all the leverage.
A hostage situation is exactly what it is. Think about the power dynamics. That whale client probably knows they make up half your revenue. which means at any moment they can demand price cuts, extended payment terms, or dedicated support teams.
And you have absolutely no choice but to comply because they're keeping the lights on.
A buyer does not want to buy a business where an external third party dictates the terms of survival.
So how do buyers mitigate this if they still want to buy the company? Do they just walk away?
Sometimes they walk away. But if the business is otherwise great, they will use financial engineering to shift the risk back onto the seller. They will use an earn-out.
What does that look like?
They will say, I agree the business is worth $5 million, but because this one client is 50% of your revenue, I am only going to pay you $3 million in cash today.
And the rest?
The remaining $2 million will be paid out over the next 2 years, but only if that specific massive client renews their contract.
Oh, that is brutal. So the seller is still on the hook. Their payout is held hostage by the client.
Exactly, which is why the framework emphasizes that the ideal scenario is a highly diversified customer base, spanning multiple industries with long-term, legally binding contracts.
Diversification acts as a structural shock absorber against macroeconomic fluctuations and inevitable client churn.
Exactly. But we also have to apply this exact same concept of concentration risk internally to the team.
Right, because an organization isn't just a collection of software systems and client contracts. It's a living, breathing ecosystem of human beings.
And the framework stresses that a skilled, stable team is often the most valuable, tangible asset the business possesses.
Think about it from a continuity perspective. Let's say you successfully removed yourself as the founder from the daily operations. You hired a brilliant general manager and a genius lead engineer, and they run the entire show.
You solve the owner dependency problem.
But now you have a new problem. If that general manager and that lead engineer decide to quit and start their own competing firm the day after the acquisition closes, the buyer is right back at square one.
The brain trust has left the building.
I see this all the time in the tech space. If I'm acquiring a boutique software development firm, the core value isn't the legacy code they wrote 3 years ago. The value is the senior developers who actually understand the architecture and know how to maintain it.
Exactly. If I look at the HR records during due diligence and I see that the turnover rate is massive, if the entire engineering team has been there for less than 8 months, that is a screaming red flag.
It signals absolute operational instability. It screams that the culture is toxic, or the compensation is below market, or the management is incompetent.
And buyers will dig deep into the HR files. They don't just look at turnover rates. They will audit the employment contracts.
Do they look for non-competes?
Oh, yeah. Do these key employees have enforceable non-compete or non-solicitation clauses? Are they locked in with vesting equity or long-term bonus structures that incentivize them to stay through the transition?
A savvy buyer wants to see deep management capability, cross-trained staff, so that no single employee holds a monopoly on a critical process.
And a documented history of compliance with all workplace and labor regulations. You are basically selling organizational stability.
Okay, let's take a breath and take stock of where we are in the buyer's journey, because we've built a formidable structure here.
We really have.
The foundation is poured in concrete. We have 3 years of audited financials and predictable recurring revenue. The interior walls are framed and load-bearing. We have automated systems and zero reliance on the founder.
And the roof is reinforced and weatherproof. We have diversified our client base so no one can hold us hostage, and we have a legally secured, cross-trained team.
The fortress is built. But now the buyer walks up to the battlements of this fortress, looks outward at the broader market, and asks the next set of questions.
How defensible is this fortress against invaders, and how much territory can it realistically conquer in the next 5 years?
This is where the conversation shifts from defending the downside risk to projecting the upside potential. We are moving into the realms of competitive advantage, growth potential, and industry outlook.
Because ultimately, a private equity firm or a strategic acquirer isn't just buying your historical past. They aren't even just buying your stable present.
They are buying the future cash flows.
Right. They are trying to buy a lucrative, expansive future. Let's start with the moat. The framework states that businesses that stand out from competitors command drastically higher valuations.
They are looking for sustainable, structural advantages that are incredibly difficult, or ideally impossible, for a new competitor to replicate.
Warren Buffett talks about this all the time, the economic moat. Let's look at the specific examples of these moats from the research. Strong brand equity, proprietary products, intellectual property, exclusive supplier agreements, and high switching costs.
The ultimate due diligence question that every business owner should be able to answer in one sentence is, Why exactly do your customers choose you over your competitors?
And if your answer is, we offer great customer service and we are slightly cheaper than the guys across town, a buyer will mentally walk out of the room.
Because being the cheapest is not a competitive advantage. It is a brutal, exhausting race to the bottom.
Exactly. And great customer service is a subjective claim that every single business on Earth makes. Neither of those are defensible moats.
But what if my answer is, we hold an exclusive 10-year legally binding distribution agreement for the most critical, sought-after raw material in our sector, and nobody else in the state can legally sell it?
Or, we own the patent for a proprietary manufacturing algorithm that cuts production time by 40%, giving us a structural margin advantage that competitors literally cannot copy without facing a massive lawsuit.
Now the buyer's eyes light up, because those are deep, wide, crocodile-filled moats. They fiercely protect future profitability and market share from commoditization.
Another incredibly powerful moat is switching costs.
Right. Like if you sell an enterprise software platform that is deeply integrated into a client's HR, payroll, and daily operations,
The pain, cost, and disruption of ripping your software out and switching to a competitor is massive. Even if a competitor offers a slightly cheaper product, the client will stay with you simply because switching is too agonizing.
high switching costs guarantee recurring revenue. So once the buyer's convinced the moat is deep enough to protect the castle, they look to the horizon. Growth potential.
The framework explicitly notes that purchasers are entirely willing to pay a premium multiple if they can clearly, logically identify pathways for massive future expansion.
And they list the classic growth vectors: launching into new geographic territories, adding complementary service lines, aggressive e-commerce expansion, franchising the operational model, or penetrating untapped demographic segments.
But this is where we see a massive psychological disconnect between sellers and buyers.
Right, I was just thinking this. Let's say I am the seller. I have spent 20 years building this fortress. I am exhausted. I am selling the business specifically because I want to buy a boat and disappear.
Understandable.
Why on earth should I spend my precious time and money mapping out a comprehensive, data-driven franchising strategy or researching the logistics of a European e-commerce expansion if I am absolutely not going to be the one executing it? Isn't figuring out the future growth the buyer's problem?
That is the most common and most expensive misconception among retiring founders. You might not be the one executing the growth, but you are the one selling the potential energy of the asset.
So I have to hand them a map.
You have to hand the buyer a detailed, credible map to the buried treasure. If you just hand them a stable business and say, good luck, figure it out, they will pay a baseline price.
But if I do the research,
If you can present a rigorously researched, data-backed growth deck kit, a blueprint that shows exactly how an injection of their capital could realistically double the company's size in 3 years by opening 3 new regional offices using your proven SOPs, you transform the narrative. You make the business incredibly compelling.
you are selling them the dream, but you are backing it up with architectural blueprints.
Precisely. And there is a very practical, mechanical reason for this. In most mid-market transactions, the buyer isn't just writing a check from their personal checking account.
Right, they're raising debt from a commercial bank, or they are pitching the deal to investment committee at a private equity fund.
Exactly. That buyer has to justify the high purchase price to their own stakeholders. If the bank sees a clear, logical, de-risked pathway to drastically increasing EBITDA, they are infinitely more likely to approve the leverage required to fund your massive payout.
So you are basically giving the buyer the ammunition they need to pay you more money.
That's exactly it. Furthermore, this growth story has to be contextualized within the broader macroeconomic reality, which brings us to the industry outlook.
The framework warns that even a highly profitable, perfectly systemized business with a great moat will struggle to attract strong offers if it happens to operate within a structurally declining sector.
It is the brutal reality of macroeconomics. It is the difference between being the absolute best, most profitable manufacturer of horse-drawn buggy whips in 1915 versus being a mediocre, disorganized manufacturer of automobiles.
The underlying macro trends dictate the ceiling of your valuation. The market will always reward tailwinds and punish headwinds.
So if you are in a declining sector, say traditional print media or physical retail in certain categories, you are fighting a massive gravitational pull. The buyer knows that even if they execute your growth plan perfectly, the overall pie is shrinking. They have to steal market share just to stay flat.
which is why the framework highlights specific industries that are currently commanding premium multiples because of massive demographic or technological tailwinds.
Right. Healthcare, specifically elder care, driven by an aging population, B2B technology and cybersecurity, renewable energy transition, essential home services like HVAC and plumbing, which are largely immune to artificial intelligence disruption.
If you operate in these spaces, your narrative is that a rising economic tide is going to organically lift your particular boat, making the investment significantly safer for the acquirer.
Okay, so we have covered the exciting stuff. We've talked about the pristine cash flow, the automated systems, the deep competitive moats, and the massive growth horizons.
You have built a highly systemized, growing business in a hot, expanding industry. You are feeling invincible. You are ready to cash that million-dollar check.
But as this framework warns us, the deal is not done until the wire hits your bank account. There are hidden landmines buried deep in the administrative paperwork that can cause a massive multi-million-dollar transaction to violently collapse right at the finish line during the final days of legal due diligence.
Let's dig into the deadly details. This is where deals go to die. We are looking at legal and regulatory compliance, and specifically, lease security.
People often dismiss these as boring administrative details, and that is exactly why they are so lethal. Visionary founders focus on marketing, sales, and product development. They completely neglect the legal foundation.
But buyers, and more importantly, the buyer's army of lawyers, will conduct exhaustive forensic due diligence to uncover every single liability.
Let's walk through the specific legal hurdles. We're talking about licenses, permits, employment agreements, and supplier contracts. Let's focus on one that I know catches a terrifying number of people off guard: intellectual property ownership.
Oh, IP ownership. Give me an example.
Let's say you built a SaaS company. You hired a bunch of brilliant freelance developers off a platform to write the core code. You paid them well, the software works flawlessly, and it's generating massive revenue.
That's perfect so far.
But you never actually made those freelancers sign a formal intellectual property assignment agreement transferring the legal copyright of the code to your corporate entity.
Oh no, that is a nightmare scenario.
During due diligence, the buyer's legal team will ask for the chain of title for the source code. When they discover that your company doesn't legally own the very product it is selling, that technically a dozen random freelancers scattered across the globe own the copyright to the code, the deal stops dead.
The buyer is not going to acquire a company that could be sued for copyright infringement by its own former contractors. You have to scramble, track down those freelancers years later, and beg them to sign IP releases, often having to pay them off to do it.
It can completely derail the acquisition.
And then there is the physical equivalent of that nightmare, lease security. For retail, hospitality, manufacturing, warehousing, and clinical service businesses, the physical location is intrinsically, undeniably tied to the fundamental value of the business itself.
The framework states that buyers scrutinize commercial lease arrangements ruthlessly. They aren't just looking at the monthly rent. They want long lease terms remaining, multiple legally binding renewal options.
And crucially, they want lease agreements that are easily transferable to a new corporate entity without the landlord having the power to veto the sale.
Let's build a real-world scenario around this because it is so common. Imagine you own a phenomenally successful, highly profitable artisan coffee roastery and cafe in a rapidly gentrifying downtown neighborhood.
Okay, I'm with you.
Your systems are perfectly documented, your manager runs the daily operations flawlessly, and you have a massive, incredibly loyal customer base that lines up around the block. Your brand equity is off the charts. A private equity group offers you an absolute fortune to acquire the brand. You are thrilled.
Okay, I see where this is going.
During the final week of due diligence, the buyer's real estate lawyer reads your commercial lease. They discover two fatal flaws. First, your lease expires in exactly 8 months, and there is no guaranteed renewal option.
Oh boy.
Second, the lease contains a demolition clause, meaning the landlord can kick you out with 90 days notice if they decide to tear the building down to build luxury condos.
Oh, that is devastating. That multi-million-dollar valuation you were dreaming about just evaporated into thin air. Because without a secure, guaranteed location, you don't actually have a business to sell.
You just have a pile of used espresso machines, some roasting equipment, and a cool logo with nowhere to put it.
Right. The buyer isn't going to hand you millions of dollars when they know they might be evicted onto the street in 8 months.
And even if the buyer wanted to take the risk, their bank absolutely will not allow it. A commercial lender will not underwrite a 10-year acquisition loan if the underlying physical premises of the business are only secured for 8 months.
The lease duration must exceed the term of the loan. A weak lease, as the framework explicitly states, can single-handedly destroy business value.
This highlights exactly why legal and administrative issues can instantly derail months of negotiations. If your regulatory permits are out of date, if your environmental compliance is questionable, if you have pending HR litigation from a former employee,
The buyer perceives massive, unquantifiable legal liability. And buyers do not buy lawsuits. They will either walk away or they will demand that millions of dollars of the purchase price be held in an escrow account for years to cover any potential legal damages.
which culminates in the framework's terrifying summary of the top red flags that scare buyers away. It is a synthesis of every point of failure we have discussed today.
Let's run through them.
They look for messy, contradictory financial records, extreme owner dependency where the founder is the bottleneck for every decision, severe customer concentration where one client holds the business hostage,
High staff turnover, indicating toxic culture or poor management. Unresolved compliance or legal issues. Downward trending revenue that signals market share loss.
outdated legacy technology systems, weak, non-transferable lease arrangements, and a complete lack of a coherent data-backed growth strategy. Any one of these can kill a deal. Multiple red flags guarantee the business is unsellable.
It is an incredibly intimidating checklist of ways to ruin a massive payout. It feels like navigating a minefield, but the framework doesn't just leave us paralyzed with fear. It actually provides a highly structured timeline for redemption.
It gives us a roadmap out of the minefield.
In the final section discussing how to aggressively increase the value of your business before going to market, the text highlights a very specific, crucial countdown. It says, the most successful premium price sellers begin preparing their business for sale 12 to 24 months before they actually list it on the market.
It's true.
Now wait, 24 months, 2 entire years. That sounds agonizing. That is like committing to a grueling full-time training regimen for a marathon just to hand someone else the gold medal at the finish line. Why does it realistically take 2 entire years just to prepare a business to be looked at by a buyer?
Because if you truly internalize the mechanics of everything we have unpacked today, you realize that absolutely none of these structural flaws can be fixed overnight. It is physically and temporally impossible.
That makes sense. You can't fake time.
Let's start with the financials. If a buyer demands 3 years of pristine, audited financial records, and your current books are a tangled mess of commingled personal expenses and sloppy data entry, you cannot just hire an accountant to invent 3 years of clean data retroactively.
Right. You have to implement strict new accounting controls today and then wait for the calendar to turn so you can naturally generate that clean historical record.
Exactly. And you can't solve concentration risk on a Friday afternoon. If Amazon makes up 50% of your revenue, you can't just magically diversify your customer base in a month.
B2B sales cycles take 6 to 9 months. You have to build a marketing team, launch campaigns, pitch new mid-market clients, and slowly dilute Amazon's percentage down to 15%. That is easily a 2-year strategic initiative.
And the same applies to the bus test and owner dependency. If the entire business currently relies on your brain, you cannot just type up a massive 100-page operations manual over the weekend and expect your staff to run the company flawlessly on Monday morning.
Transitioning from a founder-led culture to a process-led culture takes immense time. You have to document the SOPs, then you have to hire a general manager, then you have to spend 6 months training them.
And then, and this is the crucial part, you have to actually step away from the business for a year to prove to the buyer that the systems hold up without your interference.
The 24-month window is not about dressing up the business with a fresh coat of paint. It is a grueling, systematic process of entirely de-risking the asset. It is a metamorphosis.
It really is.
You are transitioning the company from a lifestyle business, a vehicle that exists solely to provide cash and ego gratification to the founder, into a highly polished, commercially viable, standalone financial product that is ready to be sold on the institution market.
That is exactly what it is. The preparation phase is about executing a ruthless checklist. auditing the financials, diversifying the client base, implementing cross-training, locking down the intellectual property, extending the commercial leases, securing key employees with long-term incentives, and building the growth deck.
Doing that effectively without disrupting your current cash flow is a massive multi-year project.
But the ROI on that project is exponential. The difference between selling an unprepared business and a fully de-risked business isn't a 10% bump in price. It's often a multiple of 2 or 3 times the enterprise value.
It is a massive undertaking, but the math is undeniable. So, as we pull all these threads together, let's look at the ultimate realization we take away from this entire deep dive. We started by talking about the dangerous trap of the million-dollar briefcase, the instinct to look only at top-line revenue, the shiny paint job on the sports car.
We have journeyed deep into the mechanics of financial predictability and quality of earnings.
We explored the absolute necessity of automated systems over founder heroics. We dissected the hostage situations created by concentration risk.
We analyzed the defensive power of economic moats, and we navigated the deadly deal-killing nature of weak commercial leases.
The synthesis of all of this is profound, and it requires a complete shift in how you view commercial value. While top-line revenue and bottom-line profitability will always remain important baseline metrics, today's sophisticated buyers are entirely focused on risk reduction.
They are buying operational efficiency. They are buying recurring, predictable revenue. They are buying customer diversification and a legally secured foundation that allows for aggressive future growth.
Valuations are not just a simple mathematical formula applied to a tax return. They are a direct reflection of buyer confidence and structural stability. The businesses that command the highest prices, that trigger bidding wars, and that close the fastest are the ones that have methodically, obsessively eliminated uncertainty from their operations.
Absolutely.
And I want to connect this directly back to you, the listener, because you might have been listening to this entire breakdown thinking, well, this is incredibly fascinating from an economic theory perspective, but I don't own a logistics firm, I'm not running a SaaS company,
Right.
and I have absolutely no plans to sell a business to a private equity firm anytime soon.
Which is fair, but the absolute beauty of this framework is that it is not just a highly technical manual for navigating M&A transactions. It is actually an absolute masterclass in building a resilient, anti-fragile organization of any kind.
This framework applies to you even if you are a freelance graphic designer, a mid-level department head at a corporation, or, honestly, if you are just trying to organize the chaos of your own personal and professional life.
Precisely. The mechanics of risk reduction are universal. If you take these exact same rigorous, skeptical buyer standards and aggressively apply them to your own daily workflow or your personal career right now, the results can be completely transformative. You have to run the due diligence audit on yourself.
Ask yourself the hard questions. Are my personal operating systems documented, or is everything jumbled in my head, meaning I can never take a vacation without my inbox exploding?
Am I overly dependent on one single client or one single employer or one narrow technical skill, creating a massive, terrifying point of failure in my own life?
Am I operating my career with predictability and a defensible moat, or am I just reacting to volatility every single day hoping I don't get laid off?
By actively documenting your own systems, by intentionally diversifying your skills and your income streams so no single entity holds you hostage, and by systematically reducing your dependency on single points of failure, you are essentially de-risking the asset of your own life. You are increasing your personal valuation.
You are building your own fortress. So we want to leave you with this final provocative thought to mull over as you go about your week. If you ruthlessly audited your own professional life today, using the exact same strict, unforgiving criteria of a skeptical millionaire buyer, how much more free time, how much more financial stability, and how much profound peace of mind could you create for yourself?
It is the ultimate framework for continuous self-evaluation.
Because at the end of the day, you absolutely do not want to be the person staring at that briefcase containing $1 million, desperately throwing it at a shiny red sports car with no service history, only to realize the engine is missing, the wheels are falling off, and the lease on the garage expires tomorrow. You want to build or buy the predictable, systemized, bulletproof machine, because whether it's in the M&A market or in your own career, that is where the true lasting value actually lies.
Mad show, let's go, open up your mind and grow. Facts and stories, things you never know. every episode.